All right, so Bernie Sanders, I mean, my God, he's coming up here, coming up with something. He's come up with a lot of things, but he's come up with something that would benefit an awful lot, a huge number of Americans. And it's simply legislation that he's going to introduce in the Senate to allow Medicare officials to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for seniors. Now, you and I both know that this is going to go about as far as Bernie Sanders can throw the Capitol building. We know that because this is a sensible piece of legislation that Sanders has in mind. Not only is it sensible, but according to a 2013 study by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, the federal government could save as much as, are you ready? $541 billion over the next 10 years by negotiating for lower drug prices similar to those paid in other industrialized countries. What would $541 billion over the next 10 years do? Let's forget that we'll all probably be gasping for breath by then. But $541 billion would, well, let's talk about education, talk about infrastructure. What else you want to talk about? But it's not going to happen. We live in the United States of America. This country is run by goddamn maniacs. They're not going to do something like this. In fact, I would say within 48 hours of Bernie Sanders introducing this legislation, the right wing is going to accuse him of politicking. Oh, it's just grandstanding. Oh, he's just trying to get people's attention. We live in the worst industrial country on earth. Do you realize that? We really do. No, not China. Us, right here. Us. That's true. As part of the Medicare Part D prescription drug program put into effect the same year that Bush and Cheney invaded Iraq, Medicare was prohibited from negotiating drug prices, setting prices, or establishing uniform lists of covered drugs. So let me ask you, Truth Seeker, real quick, pop quiz. Who benefited from Medicare Part D prescription drug program? 3, 2, 1. Right! The pharmaceutical companies. Not old folks who are on Medicare. No. You see, Americans pay the highest prices for prescription drugs in the world. Sanders made mention of that in a recent blog post. Last year, according to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, drug prices jumped 12.6%. What was inflation last year? 0.5%? The increase was more than twice the rise in overall medical costs. So who is benefiting? You remember, follow the money. Who's benefiting? Well, of course. Now, the pharmaceutical industry, being the filthy, murderous sons of bitches that they are, oh, no, I like their vaccines, but, beyond that, the pharmaceutical industry says that those price increases reflect the high cost of research and development. I won't say most, it used to be most, research and development was done at the National Institutes of Health. It was done by taxpayer money. The research was done at universities, a great number of which were working on government grants. So the pharmaceutical industry now says, well, the high cost of research and development. And the pharmaceutical industry says that critics often fail to take into account the advances being made in treatment. Like what? Every time I turn on the television, it's another medical procedure or a medical device or a drug that is killing people. What's the latest one? This thing that they put into people to stop blood clots from going from their lower body into their heart and lungs or brain. And it turns out it's killing people. Now, the medical devices industry, is that the pharmaceutical industry? They're all interconnected. You know it as well as I do. And what are those commercials that just overwhelm the evening news, the network news? What are those commercials about? It's a game, and if I that Molly and I play, and if I happen to have, and I try not to, but if I happen to have the network news on, at 6:30 here in the Atlanta area, at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. And those commercials come on and talk about, oh, what's this one, Lyrica? I forget, what's Lyrica for? Do you have any idea, Kathy?
Sleep? I don't know.
No, it's not for sleep. But this drug, I mean, the list of adverse reactions that are expected up to and including instant death. And Molly and I have turned it into a game. As soon as one of those drug commercials come on, if we're having dinner or we're watching television or something, we will stop and we'll listen and we'll look at each other. The kid's 11. We'll look at each other like, okay, here it goes, here it goes. And we will mock the whole list, you know, the voiceover, while the TV commercial shows happy people playing in the backyard. Oh, look, we're having a barbecue. Oh, isn't this nice? But if you take this drug, you won't eat barbecue again. You won't eat any goddamn thing again. Why? Because you will possibly be dead or immobilized. And then, of course, during the noon news, I don't know how it is in your city, but during the noon news, who are the biggest sponsors of the 12 o'clock noon news? Attorneys who are suing the pharmaceutical companies. And they tell you why they're suing them. Or the medical devices industry. It's like rats and cockroaches chasing each other round and round and round. This is the medical delivery system in the United States. So Bernie Sanders, Jesus God. Sanders wrote on Huffington Post Tuesday, quote, Americans should not have to live in fear that they will go bankrupt if they get sick. People should not have to go without the medication they need just because their elected officials aren't willing to challenge the drug and healthcare industry lobby. He went on, between our government's unwillingness to negotiate prices and its failure to effectively fight fraud, it's no wonder drug prices are out of control, end quote. Now, Sanders' proposed legislation, this is what it would do, and this is why it'll never see the goddamn light of day. Not in the United States of America. We don't live someplace where the interest of the people is foremost. No, we don't live there. We haven't lived there for a long time, 70, 80 years. We don't live there. Don't kid yourself. Now, I know the people listening to this program don't kid themselves. But if you're some white right-wing nut job, happen to tune in and hear this program, don't kid yourself, pal. You don't live where you think you do. But never mind, Jesus is coming. So Sanders' proposal would do the following. First, it would instruct the Department of Health and Human Services to begin negotiating lower prices with drug companies doing business with the government under the Medicare Part D drug program. Now, the Medicare Part D drug program purchases an enormous amount of medications. What did I just say? $541 billion over the coming decade, 10 years, $54 billion a year would be saved. Now, the drugs aren't free. They should be, but they wouldn't be. Second, under Sanders' proposal, it would permit individuals, pharmacists, and wholesalers to import prescription drugs from licensed Canadian pharmacies. Why Canada? Well, there's a couple of reasons why Canada. They have, their drugs aren't made in India. That's number one. Not all of them, anyway. And Canada has a rational drug program. Number three, other reasons too. Number three, require pharmaceutical companies to report information to Health and Human Services Secretary that affects drug pricing. That would include the total costs claimed for research and development. If they ever had to really reveal what they're spending on R&D and how much of it they pay and how much the government or the universities pay, oh my. And the portion of development expenses that are offset by tax credits are covered by federal grants. Yeah, they don't talk about that, do they? You want us to develop a new flu vaccine? We need some tax credits. We need some federal grants. We will retain the profits. We will decide how much the drug costs. Let me tell you something. I went and got a flu shot, Kathy, 2-3 weeks ago? I went and got my flu shot. I went to Walgreens drugstore, which is where I usually go to get a flu shot. What the hell? And Medicare, I'm on Medicare, pays for it. Now, if there's any left over, my secondary is my insurance through my union. But the Walgreen woman said, "Do you want the regular shot or the high dose because you're over 65?" I said, "Well, give me the high dose." Absolutely. So I got the injection, and excuse me, she gave me a receipt and said, I owe zero. But I looked at the price, $60 for a flu shot. 60. If I had gone to one of the county health departments here in Atlanta, it would have cost what is it, $20 or less? 10. I think it's 10 or 20. $60 for a flu shot. We'll be right back. 10 before the hour. Now, don't forget, when I tell you what Bernie Sanders is proposing next week for Medicare prescription drug benefit, Donald Trump, who is the leader on the Republican side, is going to build a wall and start another war. And Hillary Clinton is going to start another war and build a wall. Anyway, the fourth thing that Sanders' proposal would do would be to require drug companies to provide price information regarding overseas sales of their products. Do you know what they charge for their medications overseas? I'm just guessing here, but it's less than half, maybe less than a third of what you and I pay, because we are suckers. We're fools. We have a government that is a wholly owned subsidiary of about 5 industries. The government of the United States, the legislative branch, is totally disconnected from the American people. Their charge, the legislative branch, is to provide as much control as possible to the corporations, to the capitalists. And they will say anything to get elected. They will tell you anything you want to hear, but they are not the least bit interested in you or your children or your mama or your auntie or your grandmother or anybody. They don't care. You all can just die and rot. The name of the game is show me the money. You do know that, right? Okay, good. Anyway, require drug companies to provide price information regarding overseas sales of their products as well as sales to federal agencies in order to provide greater transparency in assessing whether Medicare and other federal agencies are getting a fair shake. Bernie, you comedian, you. No, I appreciate what he's writing here, but I mean, he has to write it. He has to write it in a way, and I realize that this is not Bernie's words. This is the words of the writer at Fiscal Times. But I like that, to make sure that federal agencies are getting a fair shake from the pharmaceutical industry. Are you kidding me? Oh, okay. Here's what else his bill would do. Restore the minimum rebate on drugs covered under Medicare Part D for low-income Medicare beneficiaries. That provision, eliminated with the creation of the Part D program, would save $103 billion over a decade, according to the CBO projection. There was a minimum rebate on drugs covered under Medicare Part D for low-income Medicare beneficiaries, which is now gone. Never give a sucker an even break, right? Sanders' proposed legislation would be accompanied by tough penalties for violations of its provisions or fraudulent activities, including termination of any remaining, quote, market exclusivity period for any drug product found to be in violation of criminal or civil law. Which means when the pharmaceuticals are caught stealing and lying and cheating and committing fraud, they will lose their permission to have that exclusivity on one of their drugs that will kill you. It'll stop you from getting up to pee in the middle of the night. Instead of getting up to pee 4 times, you'll only get up to pee twice. However, if you notice that you're becoming suicidal, or you develop massive warts on your eyeballs, or if all of a sudden, if you're a man, you can no longer get erections, if you're a woman, your periods stop, well, that's just a trade-off for not having to get up 4 times at night to pee, only twice. And the exclusive patent on that drug will no longer be yours if you're caught cheating. Oh my God. A recent Kaiser Health tracking poll found that 76% of adults think that the top healthcare priority for Obama and the Republican-controlled Congress should be, quote, making sure that high-cost drugs for chronic conditions such as HIV, hepatitis, mental illness, and cancer are affordable to those who need them. Oh, please! Who wrote that? Honest John the Commie? To make sure that they're affordable for those who need them. Have you been keeping track of what some of these new cancer therapies are costing? Huh? Have you? $300,000 a year. And they're not covered by Medicare. Why should they be covered by Medicare? Because most people who get cancer are people who are older. A lot of them are on Medicare. Making sure that high-cost drugs are affordable to those who need them. That sounds like something Lenin might have written, and I don't mean John, right? Doesn't it? Come on, you know where you live. You live in the United States of America. Make drugs affordable for you. You get sick, you need a drug, you don't have health insurance, you don't have money, you die. Sorry! Didn't you use your health savings account? Oh, you did use it. And? Oh, there was only enough money in there after 9 years of saving to pay for what? One emergency room visit. Oh, I see. Well, you should have been rich. The prohibition on Medicare negotiating over drug prices was a major concession by the Bush administration to the pharmaceutical industry, one that has prevailed for over a decade despite repeated vows by President Obama to repeal that ban. Obama promised to change the law to allow Medicare officials to begin negotiating with drug companies to lower prices, but pulled back that promise in negotiating with pharmaceutical industry over the terms of the 2010 Affordable Care Act. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh awayeth. We'll be back. Stay with us. I'm Mike Malloy.